Hello, welcome back. So if you followed the first video, you're going to have something looks a bit like this, where we put the red LED with the longer positive leg into the number 13 and the short leg into our ground. So that was good and we got the light blinking, but what happens if I want a few more lights? So if I want a couple of greens, maybe the two reds, what if I want to get all of these blinking? Well, I mean, maybe you think, well, I'll just stick them in like this, maybe like that, something like that. But that's not going to work. Why? Well, remember, we always have to have this shorter leg going into ground. So if I just stick that in like that, then I've got one leg in the number 10 and one in number 11. That's not going to complete my circuit. I must have the short leg going into ground. So how do I do that? Well, shall I try and stick it in with the other one? Probably not a good idea. And you're not going to be able to do that for many lights anyway. So we need to use something else. And that's where our breadboard comes in. So our breadboard allows us to connect many lights, buzzers and other components quite simply. So let's have a look at how we're going to do that. These breadboards can look quite confusing if it's the first time you've seen one. I remember the first time I saw it, I didn't have a clue what was going on with it. Just looks like a load of holes. You can't really understand how they're related. That's one reason why with the Monster Club kits we give you these transparent boards, so you can kind of see a little bit inside, but even then it's not actually clear enough. So there's a few things to notice. We've got these positive and negative lines here, and in the same on the other side. Now these lines, that's just drawing. That doesn't actually mean anything. It's up to you how you use it. But you can use this as a guide to help you remember where you've plugged things in. So whether you put something next to this blue line or red line doesn't really have any meaning. That's just there to help you remember. So let's have a look at these lines first of all then. So as the line suggests, everything along here is connected. So all of these holes underneath, where we can kind of see inside, there's just all these metal strips inside the board. So everything along there, that's one long connected line. And the same for here. That's one long connected line. So it connects along that line there. That's one line, and this is another line. So if I plug something into here, it's also connected to whatever's plugged in up here. But it's not connected to anything else on the board. So it's not connected to this or anything over here. So that's one long line. Basically just like one piece of wire, and the holes let you connect things to that wire. And obviously it's the same for the other side. So everything is joined up in one line. So as we talked about before, we need a ground to connect everything. So we can use the blue negative line as our ground. Anything we want to connect to ground, we can connect along here. You could also connect it to this one, because remember, this is just a drawing. Doesn't actually mean anything. The important thing is where you put things. Okay, so everything's connected up and down there in straight lines. Now, the center of the board, we've got all these numbers and letters. So it's a grid, works like coordinates, if coordinates is something you've learned. These are connected this way. So everything, well, this is row 30. So everything here is connected. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They're connected. Now we can see that there is a gap there. So there is no join from this side to this side. So something here is not connected to something here. So we basically have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points that are connected there. And the same for each of these. They're all connected going this way. But something in this line is not connected to this line. That is separate. So the main thing you have to remember is anything along here is connected going along that way in one line. And anything here is connected that way, but not to this side. That's separate. There's a gap. Okay, that's given you a bit of a start. It will become clearer the more you use this. And of course, always the best thing is to experiment. So if you want to know if two things are connected, then by trying to connect something, say, this way, you'll find out whether that's working or not. But we're going to get started with how to get some LEDs into this breadboard. And then, of course, we have to connect that to our Uno board. So I'm going to take out this red LED, and our next job is to see how do we get this in this board connected to our Uno. So we're all ready to go with our breadboard and our first LED. So I'm going to put this into here, and we have to remember what we discussed before. So if I put it in, say, this way, well, this isn't really going to work. Why? Well, we have to remember what's going on here. So everything in this line is connected. So what I've just done is I've directly connected both of my legs here together. So I've just made a circuit and gone round and round like that. That's not really going to work because I need to get power to this. I need to send a signal to it. I need to have ground. But I've just made a complete circle. So putting it in that way isn't going to work. Remember, on our board, I need to have 1 going to one of these numbers here and 1 going to ground. So these are separate things. At the moment, what I've done now is pretty much the same as perhaps putting it in that way, or worse, it's almost as if I've put both legs straight into one number. So we're not going to get much out of that. So let's go back to the board. So I don't want to put anything along that way or along that way, anything like that, because things are connected in this line. Instead, what I want to do is to have it going like that, because this line is separate to this. It's not connected. So this is one line, this is another line. That's what I need to do. Now the other thing you might want to check out before you put it in is, of course, which is your ground and which is your positive. So my ground is the short leg here, and my positive that will go to a number is the long leg. Once you've put it in, then it's a bit harder to see which is which. So it helps just to remember before you do that. Otherwise you have to keep lifting it up and checking, which does happen. So I'm just going to keep my ground leg, the short one, on the outside. So I can remember that that one on the outside is the ground. Okay, well that's in the board. Now I have to get it connected to my Uno in some way. So I'm going to use my jumper wires, and I'm using the ones with the pins on both ends. So I can use this to connect up this one. Now if you remember, this one on the outside was my ground leg. Now anywhere, let me get this closer, any of these holes I can use. Any of these is connected to that leg. So I could put it in here, doesn't really matter. So I'm just going to give myself a little bit of space. I'm going to put it into that one. So now I have this leg is connected through the metal inside the board, through here, and it's connected to this wire. Now this wire I can now take to my board. Now do you remember that the outside leg was the ground leg? So I'm going to put that into the ground hole just there. So I'm going from ground, coming all the way through this wire, which is going into the board, which is connected along this line, connected along here, and connected to this leg, like that. Now I'm going to do the same for the positive. So I've got another jumper cable here, and again, these colours don't matter. They don't change anything about the wire. That's just a piece of coloured plastic, and the colours are there to help you keep organised and to help you remember. But it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter what colour you use at all. So now, move it around this way. I need to get a connection from my positive leg, the one here, over to my board. And just in the same way, I can use any of the holes that are lined up with that leg. Any of these will do the job. So just to keep things neat, I'm going to keep it next to my ground cable, and so that's in like that. And then I'm going to bring this end into my board, and I'm just going to use the number 13 again. Okay, so that has connected my LED to my board, but through the breadboard, through these cables, and into the ground and number 13. So I'm just going to connect this up to the computer so we can see whether that's actually working. So here we are. I have the same setup as before, but I've connected my board to my laptop through the USB, and I'm using the same code as in the first video, the code where we turned the light on and off. And in that code, if you remember, I was using number 13 port. So I'm still using number 13 here. So we don't have to change anything about the code. All we've done is connect the bulb up in a different way. So I'm going to upload that code and we'll see what happens. Okay, so there we go. Just like before, I have my LED blinking. So this is exactly the same as we did in the last video. In fact, I'm going to show you that. So I'm going to unplug here. I'm going to take my LED, and with that shorter leg going to ground. In fact, we can even see with the onboard LED that code is running. And I'm going to plug it in just like before. Exactly the same effect. I'm going to take it out. I'm going to plug these in again. So that was my ground, and that was my positive. So this is where we can use the colours to help us. So that green one, that green is going to ground. So over on my breadboard, I know that this green cable is leading to ground. So I must have my ground leg connected to that green one. And the ground leg is the shorter one. So I'm going to plug that in there. and we have the LED flashing. Now, just to show you that it doesn't matter where in this line I plug it in, I'm going to take it out and I'm going to move it closer, still working, and I'm going to move it closer again, still working, and if there's room to put them right next to each other, there we go, still working. Let me just take that back. So that's how we get a basic connection from my breadboard to my Arduino Uno. So I hope you've been able to follow that okay. If not, go back, have a look at the video again, and the best thing is just experiment. So what happens if I switch these over? So I'm going to take them out and I'm going to put them the other way round, and well, now we have nothing happening. This light here tells us that that code is actually running on the board, but it's not doing anything here, so there's something wrong with my connection. Now what's wrong with my connection? Let's go back, let's check this ground line. So the ground line, that's the green wire here. So I know that the green one must be connected to the ground pin of the LED, and if I remove this, well, I can see that it's not connected to the ground pin, it's connected to the longer positive pin, so that is not going to work. So I must connect the green line to the ground pin. So to do that, I need to have the ground pin over this side. Now, when I plug in, we see that connection is back and the LED is blinking. Okay, so we'll stop there, and in the next video, I'm going to show you how we can use this breadboard to connect multiple LEDs.